So for the past 5 months straight, I played every single God of War game for the first time ever. Prior to even starting this journey, I don't even know why I picked God of War to play at the time. I think it was because Ragnarok was coming out at the time and I didn't really understand what all the hype was about. So I was like, let me try and get filtered in here and kind of join the journey that everyone else is doing. And I've heard of Kratos before. It's pretty hard not to. It's the dude that's very pale with the red tattoos, and now he has the gorgeous beard. So it was a no-brainer for me to start the game, and boy was I in for a treat. So today we're gonna pretty much just be discussing everything that happened between God of War 1 and Ragnarok and my opinion on it, and also, of course, creating a tier list. So starting with God of War 1, prior to even playing this game, and actually even in the beginning of playing it, I didn't know it came out in 2005. Somehow the game that is almost older than me still holds up in 2023. I don't know if it's because I played it on the PlayStation Now thing where you can kind of stream your games, which was honestly kind of weird, but I didn't know of any other way of doing it at the time. Somehow though, the game held up graphically, and amazingly it held up with the combat that was in the game. The game somehow felt so smooth and crystal clear with the combat in a way where it almost did it better than games do combat nowadays. Now I can definitely see how some of the Arkham games probably got some inspiration from God of War 1. It just didn't feel like there was any like clunkiness or like bad responsiveness to like attacks or something. Everything just felt, if you felt like Kratos and you felt good swinging his blades of chaos. But getting into the story of God of War 1, it's not the craziest thing in the world. I don't expect the game from 2005 to be that crazy, but it was still amazing because I don't even know what other games came out at the time, and I know for a fact none of them were rivaling God of War 1. I got to react to the infamous cliff scene that I saw all over Instagram at the time, which was pretty funny. I mean, it wasn't funny, but you know what I mean. Also learning that Kratos actually has a huge backstory and it's not just some big brute that likes to kill people. Like learning that he had to sell his soul to Ares to get out of the fight with the barbarians and stuff. And then also being tricked by Ares into killing his own family. Pretty crazy stuff, man. And I did not realize the game would be filled with something like that. But it definitely explains the whole avenge everyone and I'm mad at everyone. It makes sense. It doesn't make it sound stupid coming from his perspective. Also, I didn't know Kratos was kind of a bad guy at the time. I was only familiar with the dude with the beard and I didn't know of his younger days, so it's pretty cool seeing that. Also, killing Ares at the end was very satisfying. I'm going to talk more about the boss fight in a minute, but I thought it was pretty cool. But getting into the stuff that I loved from the game, apart from that story stuff, the Blades of Chaos first being introduced to me, I've always seen and heard the chain sound effect, and I thought using them was amazing. I still think in all of the other games, the Blades of Chaos were the most fun, or whatever their alternatives are in later games. But the Blade of Artemis, I think that's how you say it, that blade was amazing too. I love doing the heavy attacks where you just swing on like 5 enemies at once. So satisfying, along with the purple glow it kind of gives off. The Rage of the Gods was incredible too. Really cool power, and I had no idea that was in the game. And then also the magic and stuff. I had no idea magic was in God of War, but Poseidon's Rage and the Army of Hades was amazing. Games later on even build onto that system even better. But also a boss fight that I thought was extremely good, and I actually even thought it was better than the main boss fight, was Pandora's Guardian, that giant mechanical bull, I think it was. I thought it was a really fun boss fight. I thought it was really well made. I didn't find myself getting too frustrated with it, which was nice. I think it took me a few tries, but it was still very satisfying and honestly fun to get through it. The only bad kind of things I have with God of War 1, it's not really entirely bad, it's just things that made me frustrated. The Wraiths, number one, spinning around under the floor and stuff was very annoying. Some of the puzzles were a little difficult. I feel like this game fits the puzzle style though, because at the time there were probably game books that came out with it, and I know for a fact I would have bought the book to help me get through this, because I had to look up a few YouTube videos on how to do everything every once in a while. But there were a lot of things that made me rage as well. The one ramp thing where you had to push that guy up in that bird cage.
Bro, there are too many people here.
And then of course the stealing of the necklace, and overall the underworld was pretty annoying. I thought there were a lot of little chests I wanted to get, and I just couldn't reach them, and I would get frustrated a lot. But Moving on to the last thing I didn't really love was honestly the Ares boss fight. I thought the theme of it was really cool. I would have liked to watch the boss fight. Playing it was a little rough. I had to put it down to the easiest difficulty because I felt like the main objective and way of beating Ares was running away from him and letting him kind of strike first, which I guess is cool. But like I had this giant blade, giant sword thing that I kind of just wanted to make the first move with Ares. I don't know if that's just my opinion, but yeah, I thought the boss fight could have been a little better, but I think the look of it was really cool. But moving on to the tier list, I think I would rank this game, you guys might not agree, but I would rank it at a B tier spot. Personally, if some of the other games didn't come out, like 2, 3, 2018, or even Ragnarok, I think this game is an A tier game. But when you compare them to all the other iterations, I think this one's a little worse than all the other ones, and not that much worse at all. B is still very good, but I don't know. I personally think it's a B tier game. God of War 2 was a game that honestly, looking back on it, I'm trying to find things I didn't like, and I really can't think of anything. The entire game was fun and honestly wasn't not annoying at all, and I think it even built upon what God of War 1 did perfectly and made it even better. The main category with that improvement comes from the story side. The entire story was just improved on and so many more things were added. It added so much more kind of lore to the game and kind of a whole timeline kind of ordeal. It felt like this story was going to be lasting for a long time, which was very cool to see. But starting off with the game, you know, the conflict between Kratos and the other gods began. No one really approved of his barbarian tactics. Kind of the conflict between Athena and Zeus. Of course, the infamous battle with Zeus and Kratos at the beginning. Zeus ends up killing Kratos, putting him into the underworld, where he's then saved by Gaia, a Titan, and they want to work together to take back Olympus and stuff, which is very cool. Then, of course, the Sisters of Fate to pretty much have a whole time traveling aspect to God of War, which is pretty cool. I thought it was the highlight of the game with the story. But of course, we also learned about Zeus's past with his father Kronos, how he was eating all the children to make sure the prophecy didn't come true, and of course it does. And then, of course, the ending where Kratos goes back in time, almost kills Zeus, starts a war, and then actually kills Athena as well, due to her kind of jumping in between and almost kind of betraying Zeus. But I understand where she's coming from, I guess, wants to protect Olympus, but whatever. And then the final scene, which honestly is the highlight of the God of War franchise to me. The buildup was insane, but the cliffhanger at the end of everyone climbing Mount Olympus up to the gods. Kratos and all the other Titans just climbing the giant mountain, which was so cool. Some of the other highlights of the game were Athena's blades, of course. They're kind of just the blades of chaos, but kind of revamped a little bit. Atlas Quake and Kronos Rage were pretty cool. Kronos Rage was kind of like Poseidon's Rage a little bit, which now that I'm looking at it makes sense. Atlas Quake, which is OP, one of the best magic abilities in God of War, period. Then we have the Amulets of Fates, which was perfect with dealing with the frickin' wraiths and stuff, being able to slow time down and not getting bombarded by them through the ground like a bunch of mole rats. And then another infamous scene that came up, which was this one. Oh, he's...
Is this how you face me, coward?
So in the span of like a month and a half, I got to learn a bunch of the memes that I've been seeing, and I finally could be intertwined with what was going on at the time on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, which is pretty cool. The only thing I did have a problem with, again, was the puzzles. I kind of felt like they were a little too difficult again. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just dumb, but I feel like God of War 1 and 2, you needed a book to help you with doing some of these. I almost felt like it didn't kind of give me a good path of where to go sometimes, like a good direction. I don't know if it's just because it's an older game and that's how they were made back then. They didn't hold your hand as much, so maybe I'm just prone to being a little dumber with things like that. But overall, I ranked this game very highly. I actually had it higher up, but I kind of was reworking my tier list because of the games that come after this. So I'm going to put God of War 2 at an A tier spot. I would even put this at S tier if some of the other games didn't come out. But I just think I enjoyed some of the other ones a little bit more, and I think that kind of sets them up on a different category with where I rank them. And for the next game, this game is honestly, I'm gonna say it right now. This game is a top 3 game for me of all time. I'm gonna start right off with God of War 3 as the saying that there's nothing wrong with God of War 3. There is nothing bad about this game. This game is literal perfection. And first, starting off with God of War 3, the story stuff was implemented perfectly. There was a perfect amount of story mixed with the huge amount of chaos that was going on. I think if any more story things were implemented, it honestly would be a little slower and would kind of take away from the gory and the chaos going on. It was a perfect blend of God of War 1 and 2 where it met right in the middle and didn't really indulge you with too much, but it put just enough to where it had you guessing, all right, what's going to happen next with Pandora or whatnot. Now, for the long list of cool stuff that was going on in this game and things that I will remember forever as being some of the most fun gaming techniques or whatever you want to call them in gaming, I literally put on my list literally everything. The Blades of Exile, of course, Blades of Chaos, Blades of Athena, everything just kind of reworked a little bit. Claws of Hades were so cool. The Nemean Cestus was one of my favorite weapons in the game. I honestly think it was my favorite, as along with many of you, I think. I think everyone loved that weapon so much. The Nemesis Whip was also very cool. The Army of Sparta was dope. The Soul Summon. The Nemean Roar was also in this game, and all three of those things were kind of the magic of the game, and they went along with the weapons, which I thought was a perfect blend of the two different game mechanics, because it gave you an option and a use to actually use the other weapons for once. I think God of War 1 and 2 kind of were lackluster with that. There were definitely weapons that were a little worse than others, and honestly using just the Blades of Chaos and the Blades of Athena and the other two were kind of worth it over the other ones. And God of War 3, you could literally play with each weapon and have a good time with each one. And then also the Boots of Hermes were so cool, running that freaking fast, and you could also run on walls on certain parts of the game, which was crazy. And of course, every boss fight in this game was incredible. From fighting Poseidon, Hermes, Helios, Hades, which was my favorite, and then of course Zeus at the end, which was a perfect ending to the trilogy. And also the graphics were outstanding in this game. When I went from 2 to 3, because I took a little bit of a break in between, but when I hopped on 3 for the first time, I was like, what am I looking at? The colors were incredible. The gameplay felt even smoother somehow. You could just tell this game was a little bit more next gen than the other two, and it was perfect for the last game in the trilogy. Honestly, in the comments, let me know what your favorite boss fight was in this game, because there are so many different ones to pick from. And I think any option you pick is a good pick. I know this little review of 3 was a little shorter than the other two, but I don't really have much to say about 3. 3 is an S tier game, and there's nothing else I can say about it. Next, we have a whole new installation in the God of War franchise. The games that really flipped everything that you knew about God of War on its head. For me, it's one of, if not the best story versions of God of War in the franchise, if that makes sense. I think this game had, now that I'm thinking about it, it probably had the best story. This game was great for teasing the other gods that were to come. It made you feel like, oh man, Thor and Odin are going to be crazy whenever we see them. Or even at the moment when we had Boulder. Boulder was insane because he was someone that could actually match, if not be better than Kratos at fighting. And these are all story things as well. Having a son was crazy. Atreus was pretty cool. He definitely grew on me more over time. I think he was a little annoying at first to me, which of course he's a child. It's kind of obvious for a kid to be kind of annoying. And then we also were introduced to the whole new universe with different gods. I think they're the Nordic ones. I think I'm saying that right, instead of the Greek. And I'm going to be honest, there's too much to talk about with the story for this game. If I talked more about it, I would literally be summarizing the entire game. I recommend, if any of you have not played this game for some reason and you're watching this video, please play it. But I'm also going to talk about how I really didn't like this game when I first played it. So when it came out in 2018, I wasn't making videos or anything, and I didn't play any God of War games prior to touching it, and I didn't know what was going on, and I honestly thought it was kind of stupid because I didn't know what was happening. But after playing through the trilogy and then getting into this one, it was an incredible difference between the trilogy and the new style of games. It was incredible. And for my whole huge list of things I loved about this game, it's, like I said, it's huge. We had the armor and upgrade system. I thought this fit perfectly with God of War. God of War has some of the best combat in gaming, and I think these systems complement it so well. And of course, there's so many different armor sets you can get. You can mix and match. You can use a whole set at one time. There's different sets you can get from doing different challenges. Speaking of challenges, there are the challenges in the, I forget what it's called, but it's like the lava realm kind of thing. Also the Valkyries, which I haven't even done yet, which I would love to in the future. And then the side missions were pretty cool. They weren't the best thing in the world, in my opinion. I felt like some of them were a little repetitive at times. More specifically, the soul ones where you had to go and fetch their bones. I think that's what it was, but still, I thought they were really cool. And of course, we have some of the best characters in the franchise, if not the best. They introduced some of the most likable people in gaming. You have Brock, you have Sindri, and of course, the GOAT, the floating head, Mimir. Somehow a head that's bouncing on Kratos' butt is entertaining you throughout the entire game, and it's absolutely amazing. And of course, we have, honestly, in my opinion, the best villain in God of War, Baldur. I think he was a perfect introduction into the Nordic kind of system, and I think he honestly was kind of like a younger version of Kratos, being crazy about fighting and things such as that. Obviously, he's not completely like Kratos, but it's kind of like Kratos if he lost his mind. I think that's a good way of describing it, but I think he created a perfect dynamic in the game. Like I said, the combat was so fun. They also sprinkled in old God of War things throughout. I believe they had Athena come in at some point. Not literally, I think, but just kind of Kratos' thoughts. Of course, getting the Blades of Chaos back, which were really cool. And one thing that really captured emotion in God of War, which I never thought could happen in God of War because of it being so chaos filled and brutal-esque, I don't know what you want to call it, but the music created so much emotion in the game to where like I had to crank my headphones, and I wanted to crank it for you guys, but I was worried about copyright. The music was just perfect, especially at the end of the boss fight with Baldur at the end where Baldur ended up dying. It was amazing. And even the beginning where we send off Kratos' wife, the music that just was in the background was perfect. I think a couple months ago, I would have ranked this game a little lower, but looking back on it and thinking about what I played through, this game is an S tier game. And I think this game is even above God of War 3. And now moving on to the final God of War installment so far, God of War Ragnarok. I was so excited to start playing this game, you guys. You have no idea. And the beginning of the game did not disappoint. Just starting off with that boss fight against Thor was insane. Even when he pretty much killed you and it went to that little cutscene where you're kind of loading up after dying. And he's like, oh, no, you don't. And he just brings you back to life. I thought that was so cool. And it honestly made me a little scared of Thor. And I felt pretty intimidated by him. It was pretty cool feeling that way, playing as Kratos. It reminded me of fighting Baldur a little bit. I felt like we actually had a chance of not winning for once, which was really cool. And of course, I even felt like that when we learned the fate of Kratos, that he could die, which we ended up changing in the future. But moving on to more story stuff, I think being tracked by the gods in the beginning was really cool. It felt like we were like runaways from a prison, which was pretty cool. I also liked the story bit of Atreus finding out more about the giants and stuff. I heard a lot of people didn't like that. I still thought it was pretty cool. I liked Atreus kind of doing his own thing, and honestly kind of made the character development even better. And he was a little annoying in the game, but like I said, it's another understanding thing because he was a teenager and Kratos really wasn't letting him off the leash a little bit. He was holding him back a lot. I also thought Freya, I know someone got mad at me in the comments for saying this, but I also kind of thought Freya was a little annoying. I understand why she was acting this way. It was just like, I don't know. I think the part that I find most annoying is that she just switched up so quickly when we helped her and stuff. Obviously, there was a lot of dialogue in between, but I still felt like it was kind of quick for how eager she was to kill me. I don't know. That's my opinion. Still like her as a character, though. She's great. Meeting all the other gods was very cool. Thor, Odin. I loved meeting Heimdall. I know he's not the best person in the world, but I felt like he made a very good contrast to the other gods. He was cocky, and it was cool. He kind of knew what was going to happen in the future a little bit because he was so quick or whatever, but I thought that was really cool. Kind of reminded me of Hermes a little bit. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, they are a little bit alike, which is interesting. But the Tyr thing was also really crazy that he was actually Odin the whole time. Looking back on it, it was kind of stupid, but like it made sense of why he wasn't helping because he was Odin the whole time. Because during the whole game, I'm like, Tyr, you are useless. I don't even know why you're a character. And even finding him at the end of the game at the prison, I still felt like that. I feel like I need to see more from Tyr. Hopefully he gets some kind of redemption in the future. The death of Brock was also extremely sad. Do I think it should have happened? I don't know, but I think it added some kind of emotion to the game, which is what I like. But I would honestly compare Ragnarok to this is kind of the God of War 3 version of the new space in the franchise. It was more action-based and less story-based as 2018, which I actually really liked it. I heard a lot of different opinions on it. The things I enjoyed the most were the story, of course. They kept the upgrade system, the same map with a few new spots. And I really didn't think that they needed to improve upon much or many things in the game. I felt like 2018 did such a good job innovating everything about God of War that I'm like, I don't really think you need to change much. I kind of like what we're doing here. I also really enjoyed the Avengers kind of styled battle at the end. I feel like it fit pretty well. Although I did think Odin was a little lackluster at the end with the boss fight. I feel like he could have been a little more powerful. I don't know. I felt like Boulder was harder in the other game, but also the ending was amazing to me. I actually cried over the ending. It was the first video game that's ever made me cry like that. Kratos' fate being changed and him ending up on that wooden little wall thing. I don't know what they call them, but how everyone's kind of praising Kratos, which I thought was really cool, and it made me really happy to see. And of course, Atreus moving on to do his own thing. Great character development, and honestly makes me want an Atreus game. I feel like that could be pretty cool. I don't know if it's a full-length AAA game they can make with that, but something could definitely be made from it, in my opinion. Like I said, the only things I didn't really like were the Odin thing at the end. I feel like Heimdall was a little lackluster too, because I don't know. I was thinking of dying a lot when I was fighting Heimdall, but I beat him with a lot of ease. Like, it wasn't too bad, but it was still very satisfying to cut him off because of how much of a jerk he was. And a lot of the map was reskinned a lot from 2018, just that they added snow. But like, I don't really know what else they could have done because we're in the same kind of universe, I guess, with the Nordic stuff. And like, didn't they do that with God of War 1 through 3? Like, everything was kind of similar. I don't know. I still really liked it. But for me, God of War Ragnarok, with some of the things kind of being annoying about the game, but overall the game being really good and really great, I think God of War Ragnarok is an S tier game behind 2018 and God of War 3. And yeah, so that's my entire video, kind of going over my entire journey of God of War. Like I said, this is some of the best games I've ever played. Most definitely the most consistent franchise within gaming. I don't think there is a bad God of War game, although I haven't played the PSP games or all the other ones. I just played the main ones, so maybe there is a bad one. But somehow, there's not a bad game with the ones I played, and I thoroughly enjoyed my experience. Let me know in the comments when you guys played God of War for the first time. Was it recent? Was it all the way back in 2005? Was it God of War 2? Which was it? I would love to know. And let me know what your favorite game is too. I would love to hear it. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoy it, and subscribe for more videos like this. But see you guys on the next one. Peace out.